Hello, sports fans. Alcon Recon. This time it is the West Indies versus New Zealand in the first Test match. It was not a very good match for the West Indies, but saying it simply like this, it doesn't bother too many people because they said, oh, there's a second Test match and there's probably a third, and the West Indies will do better. The scores in the first one will not imply this at all. In the first place, the West Indies won the toss. And you're playing in a strange country. You're playing on wickets that differ very much from the Caribbean. And you also have the inexperience of a number of players in your team, particularly batsmen. But yet still, you decided that your bowlers are good enough to get the New Zealanders out for a reasonable score and probably win the Test match. False, false, false. Those batsmen were disciplined. They didn't try to be aggressive unnecessarily. They didn't try to beat the bowlers off their length and line. As a matter of fact, there wasn't too much of length and line. And the wicket was better than we expected. All these batsmen looked comfortable. They didn't run the risks of getting themselves out. They were not playing across the line very regularly. And when they were there so long that they could afford the luxury because their timing is good, their foot movement is very good, and it has brought about a total of 519 in the first innings. Let's talk a little bit about our fast bowlers. It is very amazing sometimes how they could be inconsistent, and one is left to wonder, are these really the true test fast bowlers that West Indies have produced over the years? What about Michael Holding, Malcolm Marshall? So many of these guys, and yet still they're not keeping a good line and length. The ball's deviating off the seam, but you've got to utilize it. The ball, so many times, there was one sort of statistic given after 60 balls, and the number of balls that would have hit the wicket is 7. Now, that in itself is poor strategy. On the other hand, we had some poor fielding, particularly in the back area at slip, and this was definitely unfortunate because there was not a good effort on the part of the wicketkeeper. As a matter of fact, I'm surprised he did actually play, simply because he was hit in a few months ago, and I think that psychological scare might still have been in him. But let's talk about the bowlers. Gabriel, pretty fast, good bounce, not always very good in terms of his direction, but good enough. He could have picked up 1 or 2 more wickets, but they were drop catches. Jason Holder, the captain, his line and length was not particularly good. He was getting movement. He threw his nice 6 foot plus, and he's getting bounce and is moving around. It did not affect the batsmen. We are looking at Alzarri Joseph. And I thought, to be honest with you, he was the best of the bowlers. He was on the stumps, he was getting the ball to move around, and he was varying it as well. He wasn't bowling all at the quickest pace. And I thought that whether he gets wicket or not, this is the way you bowl in Test cricket. Of course, Kemar Roach was our best bowler. He usually is. Wasn't as good as he should have been, but the scoreboard for New Zealand told you the story. So one would have expected on a wicket like this that West Indies with their 7-8 batsmen would score very, very well in some way or the other. Trust me, it was an apologetic situation. These batsmen were not even keeping their foot movement in good place and in good line. Some of them were picking up with the bottom hand and going across the line, and there's only about a 30 or 40% of hitting a ball that's coming straight at you, and you're going to hit it across on the onside. What's going to happen is that you'll have to square up, and a lot of LBWs will be called upon you. And you probably will hit the inside edge and come on to the stumps. But the batting display was horrible. And although there are some players who are aspiring to do reasonably well, do you know what number they were coming in at? 7 and 8? We had 103 from Jermaine Blackwood. If he can do it, And if Azari Joseph can score 86, what about the others? What about Campbell? What about Craig Braffett, who had scored 280 odd a few days before this? What about Bravo? What about Ruston Chase? I'm not talking about expecting all of them to score runs. I'm talking about 2 or 3 of the top batsmen to get set in and to get good scores. It never happened. It was a total display of poor batting, and I'm not knocking the batsmen alone, simply because this is not the first time that we have seen mistakes from Craig Braffett. He's been there for 6 or 7 years. We all know that he plays bottom-handed, and this encourages him to play across himself. And because of this, he gets LBW, or he brings the ball onto the stump, or he's got to play an uncontrolled stroke. Darren Bravo is a stroke player, and if he's under a little bit of pressure, he will try to do it, and sometimes he does, sometimes he does not get it. In this case, he did not get it. And we can go on and on. I'm surprised that Ruston Chase didn't bat as well as he should have batted. He started well. He didn't give his wicket away, but he got a good delivery, and that was it. So we've got to look at this very carefully. And sometimes, as I've been hearing over the past 24 hours about the poor play of our cricketers, our batsmen, our bowlers, yes, I admit. But what about the people who select them? I'm not talking about people who are not educated in the business of cricket. You've got selectors. Most of them are former test players. You've got a coach, a former test player. The same mistakes are coming up with these batsmen, and nobody seemed to be able to correct them, and the bowlers as well. Where are we going in the direction of the second test match? Do you think in 48 hours that anybody can change the mind of a little right-handed player called Craig Braffett, who's going to play across him and probably get hit into his groin again as he did in this match? And some of the others who obviously didn't have a clue as to what was going on. It's apologetic, but I'm not too tough on the players, because the history of our coaching and preparatory programs for West Indies cricket over the past few years have deteriorated immensely. There have been too many good examples of world-class players in West Indies cricket, and all you've got to do is to pull a couple of videos out of Seymour Nurse and Rohan Kanai and Sir Gary Sobers and Gordon Greenidge, Desmond Haynes and Brian Lara. Why is it we cannot learn theoretically and practically? Those are the mistakes. So don't only look into the eyes of the West Indian batsmen today and start comparing them with the others, which we should be doing, but we can't because it's not good enough. I'm disappointed. I'm annoyed as well, simply because of the fact that if we're going to teach the game, we're going to teach the game, and we've got to find qualified persons to teach this game. And it is from watching the batsmen alone could tell you they have not been educated. They're nice players. Some of them have got good hand action, good strong legs. They have a great idea of eyes and hand coordination. Excellent. But sometimes the appropriate ball is not around. They want to play the ball they want to play. They want to play it however they want to play it. And they get themselves out. And now we come crying. And we're looking for 48 hours to see if we can improve 8 of the best batsmen in the West Indies to score more than 138. I'm not annoyed, I'm disappointed, because we need to correct faults. This is not the first time. These guys should have been under the care of somebody like maybe Desmond Haynes and putting them to learn to bat in the same way that we do with Curtly Ambrose or Michael Holding and Ian Bishop are probably the 2 exponents of fast bowling. They're technically sound in what they say. They've done it on the field. Aren't those the fellas to talk to? We can think of doing that, but we haven't done it. And somewhere along the line, it's got to stop. I hope that the West Indies Cricket Board is taking a good look at this situation. We're not supposed to be embarrassed. 138 runs when you sent the opposition in to bat on a wicket which you thought would have been a walkthrough for your fast bowlers. They scored 500. And now we knew the wicket was a good wicket. The ball would not bounce high unless it's coming slow, and so on. And at the end of it all, the West Indies came out with their heads down and no good excuse. I'd leave it alone for one and see what's going to happen next. But I'm disappointed simply because of the fact I love the game and I love the West Indies. And I know that we can do better. Let's give it a try.